Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sid, and in today's video I am going to be talking about one of the biggest pet TikTokers, Kyle Thomas. He makes content primarily around his exotic pets. In his content, he usually gives them baths or feeds them some kind of food. He came on my radar a couple years ago, and I didn't think much of him at the time, and I certainly didn't expect to make a video about him either. That was until I received an email from a friend of this channel concerned about the welfare of his animals. So I gave him a Google search, and of course, there was a whole saga going on around him. It involved him trying to start his own zoo, animals dying, inappropriate animal housing, and exotic animal smuggling. So in this video, I am going to be getting into all of that. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor, Aura. Everyone gets spam emails and robocalls these days, but it doesn't have to be that way, because the way those shady emails and phone calls are being made to begin with is because data brokers are making fortunes selling your personal information. Aura can identify those data brokers exposing your personal information and submit opt-out requests on your behalf. And brokers are legally required to remove your information if you ask them to, but of course they don't make that easy. So that is where Aura steps in. They handle all of the back and forth for you. And apps like Aura are incredibly important these days, with massive data breaches happening all of the time. A recent breach at AT&T saw over 73 million customers' information leaked onto the dark web. And Aura does not only just protect you from things like that, but they do so much more to protect you and your family from the online threats that you can't see. And it can all be done by downloading their app. It's super easy to set up, and you don't need a whole bunch of different apps to get things like parental controls, antivirus, a VPN. It's all in the one place at one affordable price. So you can either let data brokers continue to profit off your private information, or you can go to aura.com/sid to start your 2-week free trial, also linked at the top of the description box. Okay, so back to Kyle and his exotic pets. He first started posting videos online in 2019 when he was 14. He would make videos with his dogs, his mother, and just a whole bunch of other random stuff. And by doing that, he grew a huge following. From May 2019 to September 2019, he had grown his following on TikTok to 2.9 million followers. And then after that period of time, he started to get exotic pets when he was 15.
I'd definitely say it was the period after summer. That was when I started getting my animals. That was when I started shaping my platforms a little bit more.
And his following only continued to skyrocket with the animals appearing in his videos. His videos were bringing in millions and millions of views, and that was translating into a lot of money. And it wasn't that long at all that he was being considered the highest earning teenager on TikTok.
So you are the UK's highest earning TikTok teenager.
Yeah, I'm blessed enough to be able to actually post on social media and call it a job. And by doing that, I've made a good amount of money.
There is money to be made. I mean, this is a living for you.
100%. I mean, I left school at 16 once I saw this was all really working. And from there, it was sort of like, this is my life now. I've got to really make something of this. But it's been amazing. I've made good money through it.
And that was when he and his mum saw social media as a potential career path for him.
Yeah.
But my mum started seeing the money come in because I live with my mum. And that was when she was like,
Whoa,
okay, yeah.
And I just want to acknowledge that Kyle is very young, and there's going to be some things that I'm going to bring up in this video that happened when he was still a teenager. And while Kyle may be the one doing these things to these animals, at the end of the day, the responsibility of these animals is his parents, and he lived with his mother, so that would be his mother's responsibility, which shouldn't have been too much of an issue because she loves animals as well.
But my mum was always animal obsessed, so I would often come home from school to the most random dogs that she had gone and rescued because she felt so bad for them. She was looking for new homes and things like that. I think one time she came home with 6 sibling staffies because there were no home for them.
She was the one who allowed him to start getting exotic animals at the age of 15, so any questionable care that took place when he was a kid is a fault of his parent. But as we will come to find out, she is pretty bad when it comes to animals, so it really was a case of the blind leading the blind. Things were bound to go wrong, and of course animals suffer because of it. The first exotic pet that he got was a meerkat named Milo, and he made a lot of cute videos with Milo that his viewers loved. He would constantly give Milo bath after bath because he would start to smell really quickly, and Kyle would make a lot of videos eating different kinds of foods, and when Milo came into the picture, Milo would also help eat some of this food. Meerkats are primarily insectivores, but will also be carnivores from time to time and eat birds and reptiles, so human junk food isn't something that they would naturally ever eat. Milo really helped grow Kyle's follower count, and he was soon known as the guy with the meerkat. He even got a graphic novel of him and Milo published, and he also later got Milo a friend named Dorothy, but Dorothy wasn't shown off very often because she was an alpha female and became very aggressive with Kyle, and even though Milo was only shown in these quick short glimpses, he became a big fan favorite. But people couldn't help but be curious as to what Milo's enclosure was like. Something I consistently saw in the comments of his TikToks were people asking to see what Milo's home looked like, and other content creators also noticed that he wasn't really ever showing the cages he kept his animals in.
Oh, Kyle, I also don't exactly love his content. I don't think he ever shows any of his enclosures. I don't think he really talks about care. I don't think he's very educational. I think he makes money. I haven't personally ever seen where he keeps his animals. Take with that what you will.
But there were glimpses here and there. At first, just parts of Milo and Dorothy's cage were seen in the background of his videos, and it appeared to be a guinea pig or a rabbit cage, which are too small for even one of those animals, so it would definitely be too small for a meerkat. Then we got a bit of a clearer view in one of Kyle's videos when he pans his camera over to his meerkat's cage, and it definitely appears as though his meerkats are crammed into a cage typically advertised for guinea pigs. And then he later posts a video of him next to the entire cage, and it appears as though it is more like a ferret cage with multiple levels, but that is still too small for a couple of meerkats. So yeah, much like parts of his meerkat's diet, their cage was also very unnatural. But he did later improve their cage. He had a 3-compartment cage built for them. The highest compartment had literally nothing in it. The second had a sand pit, and the third had their sleeping area. So yeah, better than their first little cage, but still not ideal at all. Meerkats love to roam and burrow deep into the ground and live in big family groups in the wild. And Kyle's meerkats were deprived of all of that in the first and second cage they were kept in. And then the next wild animals Kyle got were 2 marmosets. He started off with a female, then later got a male. He also fed them candy and forced them into unnatural and uncomfortable situations.
So today I'm taking my pet monkey on a walk outside for the first time ever. It's pretty cold in the UK, so Freddie's got his coat on, a nappy and a lead. He really doesn't like the grass either. I think it might be a little bit too cold for him. This is why we wanted to wear your coat. Hey, just relax. Yeah. Do you want to go and see Trish? Where do you want to go?
And while he didn't show much of his marmosets or his meerkat cages, he did show the setup for another one of his pets. He got some millipedes and did a walkthrough of him setting up their cage. In a now deleted video, he put them in a very small tank, and a millipede content creator replied with what the actual care for millipedes should have been.
Setting up an enclosure for my giant African millipedes. I'm just going to use this enclosure that I use for my frogs. I'm going to top the bottom with a really thick layer of bark. Okay, now we have a nice thick layer of bark. I'm going to completely moisten this as they will live on rotting wood. It's just, I'm not going to add any today, but I will do that like tomorrow. lots of moisture. I'm just going to make sure it's all nice and soaked. Okay, now we've got a nice thick wet layer of like bark, and this really mimics what they'd live in naturally. I'm going to add the millipedes and the rotting wood and stuff that they're already in. They're both in now, and I'm sure they're going to love their new home. I'll also be adding some food later, but I'll do videos on that. I love them.
I'm not sure if the pet story is just telling him wrong information, or he just underestimates how much space animals need to live in, because in a YouTube video with his chickens, he said that they were in a large amount of space for a tiny amount of chickens.
A big amount of space for such a tiny amount of chickens. So what other birds do you think we should get? Because we can have peacocks. We're gonna get ducks as well. Me and Mum have always loved ducks.
I come from a farming background and have had all different kinds of poultry my whole life, and as I was watching that video, I was thinking that that looked like the right amount of space for that amount of chickens, but it would definitely not be suitable for a peacock. So yeah, I was a little shocked at him saying that, but also not really surprised. And then Kyle decided to take his animal collection to the next level. He bought 14 acres of land to turn it into a zoo.
Building my very own zoo. I'm building my very own zoo. Day one of building my very own zoo.
And he was going to document the process of doing that online. And he had big plans. In addition to all of the animals, he wanted to put 5 Airbnbs on the property and have an apple orchard. But he had to start somewhere, and that was with putting up a whole bunch of temporary structures to house animals in, because even though he didn't have proper housing, he still wanted to continue to buy animals to put in the zoo.
Basically, guys, as you know, we've been putting up some temporary enclosures for the animals. And just to let you guys know, this enclosure, as much as it's a great size, it's definitely not the enclosure that will be their forever home. Put all of these temporary enclosures up, and as I've already said, everything is temporary.
And these temporary structures did not fare well in his local environment. He is based in Northern Ireland, and that is a very cold and windy place, so that made it very difficult for him to get things going. One structure even blew away.
The goat house was also looking great, but the wind has really done it some damage. I mean, it's still standing, it's pretty secure, but I think we may actually just be making a fenced enclosure for the goats. One more thing is that we had an instant garage right here, which was covering everything beside the caravan. So this looks like such a mess because the whole garage blew away. And tonight a tornado is hitting us. Are you scared, Sonny? But there is a very bad storm right now, and I just want to be up here to make sure all of the animals are safe. So I'm staying in the caravan with Mr. Sunny, and we're going to check on the animals and their enclosures every hour.
Not only that, but he also had to deal with some backlash from his neighbours. A neighbour spoke to Belfast Live about their concerns for the native wildlife that once populated the area Kyle was attempting to turn into a zoo. Another spoke to Belfast Telegraph about an interaction he had with Kyle and his mother online. In a now deleted exchange shown to the Belfast Telegraph, a neighbour left a comment on one of Kyle's videos expressing concerns about him wanting to build rental homes on the property, and then Kyle's mother messaged them saying that she would show their comments to the place that they worked at. Kyle's mum also told a reporter that people were coming onto the property and poisoning and killing the animals. She said she reported it to the police, but there was no record of the report through the police service of Northern Ireland, and there was also no record of it at the sector of the local council that is responsible for animal welfare. And on top of that, Kyle also got some pushback from animal advocates.
Kyle, I am just putting this to you that we do not need another animal exploitive business venture here.
So then Kyle began to emphasize that it wasn't a zoo but a sanctuary, and that he was rescuing animals.
Buy 14 acres of land in Northern Ireland to build my very own zoo slash animal sanctuary. It is going to be an animal sanctuary, but I feel like the word zoo makes it sound kind of cooler. I've purchased 14 acres of land to put my very own animal sanctuary on. It's absolutely massive and I'm so excited to start the build, so thank you for being patient with me and let's rescue some animals.
To drive home his message, in a written interview, he said that people need to start listening to the harsh realities of the illegal pet trade. But then in his mission to fill his zoo with animals, he participated in the illegal pet trade. In early October 2022, he got a capybara. She was originally named Stacy, but he renamed her to Queen Elizabeth. He housed her in a storage space underneath his stairs. Much like his other exotic animals, we don't really get to see what her setup is like, other than some rubber matting on the floor, but I don't think anything could make the space underneath the stairs suitable for a capybara to live in alone. But he did occasionally allow her to use a blow-up pool in his backyard to splash around in, and Kyle made lots of content with her. Underneath the stairs, he would corner her and put her in outfits and feed her. She would press herself as close to the wall as possible and would try and distance herself from him whenever he would touch her, and people did start to notice that Elizabeth didn't seem the happiest when forced into these situations.
I'm no capybara expert, but this one looks like it's trying to get as far away from this situation as it can and doesn't really look very happy with this.
Anyone who thinks this is an acceptable way to treat a wild animal, give your head a wobble.
And he did clarify that apparently there was a heater on the other side of the wall, and that's why she was pressed against it.
And by the way, just to clear things up, she stays here because there's a heater right up behind that wall.
But as it turns out, people's concerns were justified because she was actually sick and suffering this whole time. So just after a couple of weeks of owning her, Kyle and his mother took her to a vet. It was there that the vet discovered that Elizabeth was brought in from another country but wasn't declared. And because Elizabeth was brought in illegally, they of course did not have a health certificate for her and did not have a license to own her either. Capybaras are classed as a dangerous wild animal in Northern Ireland and require a license to be kept, so the vet had no choice but to alert the authorities. And in the meantime, Elizabeth did receive some treatment but died shortly after. Kyle was not able to talk about what happened to Elizabeth or the whole situation around her because his mum had to appear in court for being involved in smuggling her into the country. But to his viewers, Elizabeth's disappearance wouldn't have been too out of the ordinary because he was constantly introducing new animals that would never appear again. But once the case had gone through court and his mother had been punished, he could finally talk about what happened. So basically this situation began with Kyle finding a guy named Michael Dickinson online who would sell a capybara. And Michael was the owner of a pet shop that primarily focused on parrots. But by doing this sort of work, he was able to amass a bunch of contacts and connections in the exotic pet trade. He could get a hold of everything from zebras to capybaras, as well as lots of different kinds of parrots. So after Kyle found out all of that information, his mum, Zena, reached out to Michael to organize things. Michael was able to source a capybara, but it would have to be transported from England and be brought across the Irish Sea. Even though both England and Northern Ireland are a part of the United Kingdom, there are still restrictions and rules in place for importing animals, but those were not followed, and Michael organized somebody else to transport a capybara from Cambridge, England to Northern Ireland. Then after Elizabeth's trip to the vet and everything had unraveled, Zena, Michael, and the guy who transported Elizabeth all had to appear in court, and all three of them pleaded guilty. All three of them were given 2-year conditional discharges, which means they are spared from any further punishment, but does mean that they do have a criminal record. And then when all of this was revealed to the public, Kyle addressed it on TikTok.
Said that he's really reputable, and on his website he had zebras on there, he had capybaras on there, he had all of this, and I said to him one day, I said, hey, do you have capybaras? Are they tame? Do we need a license? Is it going to be, can it live with us, you know, for a while we wait for our house with the land, which was going through 2 weeks later? Can it live with us in our house? You know, yes, you'll just need a swimming pool, just put rubber mats out. Then one day he just dropped the animal off with us, completely blasé about everything, just dropped the animal off with us. It was nothing like we thought. And I know it's ridiculous because it's such a meme. The capybara is a meme, and it just all has literally ruined my past year of my life, and I'm not exaggerating about that at all. He dropped the animal off, the animal was sick, took a seizure 2 weeks later, passed away in front of me and my mum. And then over the past year, we've gone through this whole thing, being under so much pressure, having to hide it from everybody, and then my mum having to go to court and being treated as if she's some sort of criminal. And now we have journalists saying that we've all of these animals and that we're animal. We do this and we do that, when we have literally done none of that. We never even knew the animal was being smuggled, and the only reason I bought the land in the first place was so that I can do better for all of the animals that are in the pet trade. So I just wanted to tell you guys that. I just wanted to get it off my chest because it's just been too much. And this whole situation was a year ago.
I do believe that Kyle and his mother were duped to an extent by the pet store owner, Michael. If Kyle knew he was owning an animal illegally, I doubt he would have taken her to the vet or posted her online for millions to see. And exotic animal dealers are known for downplaying how much care wild animals require so that they can get more sales. And it sounds like that's what's happened in Kyle's case. But at the very least, Kyle's mum, who has lived a whole life, should have questioned some things. There was a story in 2013 about Xena and her daughter that made some headlines. Xena's daughter stole £20,000 worth of jewelry from her so that she could pay for some tattoos, and Xena took her daughter to court over that. Oh, and one of those tattoos even said Kyle. So you would think through that life experience where she wasn't even able to trust her own daughter for a period of time, she would be a little more careful about trusting strangers on the internet who deal exotic animals. It's just very unfortunate because it was very preventable and an animal suffered because of it. And Elizabeth was actually originally transported first from Germany, so she went from Germany to England, then across the Irish Sea to Northern Ireland. So she was really dragged all over the place so Kyle could put her in some TikToks. And it's really not a surprise that she was not in the best shape when she arrived at Kyle and Xena's house. And something that both Xena and Kyle are old enough to be responsible for is wanting a capybara in the first place. These are highly social animals from South America, and even if Kyle let her out from underneath his stairs and took her to his zoo, she never would have thrived in one of those janky makeshift enclosures where it was so cold and windy the cages were falling apart. I don't know why either of them thought that this was a good idea. They certainly didn't have the best interests of the capybara in mind. But even though there was this bump in the road, he still continued to purchase animals for his zoo. But he would frame these purchases as rescues. One example is with his first platinum silver fox named Pongo.
Pongo is a rescue from a local wildlife park. They had his mum and dad, who then bred, and the mum unfortunately ate 3 out of 4 of her cubs.
He also later got another silver fox named Rosa, and I googled all of the wildlife parks in Kyle's area, and only one of them had foxes. They had a male and a female silver fox, identical to the ones that Kyle has. And this wildlife park is just somebody's private collection of exotic animals open to the public, which is exactly what Kyle is trying to do with his zoo. And if this is where Kyle got his foxes from, and this is his first-hand experience of what a wildlife park is supposed to look like, then I can see why things aren't panning out for him, because it too certainly isn't the best environment for animals to be kept in. And Kyle says that his foxes are descendants of foxes that were saved from a fur farm.
I just want to let you know that these foxes are in captivity due to the result of fur farming. Pongo is a platinum fox and his new friend is a silver fox, and they are both descendants of foxes which were bred for their fur years ago.
So it's unfortunate that his fox's ancestors were saved from one exploitative industry to be brought into another exploitative industry, the pet trade. Like, if his fox's relatives actually were rescued from a fur farm and then ended up at a sanctuary, if that was a legitimate sanctuary, they would not be breeding foxes. So I'm certain that Kyle didn't rescue these foxes, but actually bought them. And I actually sort of think that Kyle thinks that he can buy an animal but call it rescuing because he thinks he's giving it a better life. Like he said in his capybara explanation video, he bought the property so that he could do better for the animals in the pet trade.
And the only reason I bought the land in the first place was so that I can do better for all of the animals that are in the pet trade.
So does he think he can buy animals but call it rescuing because he's putting them in a zoo? I would really like to figure that out, because a lot of the animals that he purchases he calls rescues. He got a couple of wallabies for his zoo, and in a caption on his Facebook post about them, he says that they are rescues. But then he says he got them from somebody's private collection.
An albino Bennett's brown wallaby who was born here in the UK. She came from a private collection, so somebody basically had a male and a female albino Bennett's brown wallaby. They bred and they ended up with two beautiful albino joeys.
That is not rescuing. And in an interview he says that one of his original Tenrics are a rescue.
He's joining me now with his friend Flo, a hedgehog lesser Tenric. I mean, Flo's a rescue.
But then in a TikTok where he is explaining that Tenrics multiply quickly, he said that he originally purchased 2 of them.
Hedgehog lesser Tenrics are very family orientated, so they do like to be housed in groups. Around a year ago, I purchased 2 of these and I now have 6. So either just get girls, make room for breeding, or get them neutered.
So he didn't rescue them. And in a YouTube video, he says that he rescued 9 chickens.
Before I do anything, we rescued 9 chickens over the past few weeks, and they have been in a dog kennel the whole entire time because we've been finishing their chicken run.
But then later in the same video, he says that he bought them at a market.
We're still working on taming them because they did just come from a random farmer guy who was selling them at the market.
Buying chickens from a market isn't rescuing them. Even if he did buy these animals out of horrible situations, he didn't buy them to rescue them. He bought them because he wanted them.
I'm really hoping to get some wallabies, and I think for wallabies they would need about 1 acre. I'm currently in the process of building my own animal sanctuary, and here are some of the animals which I really want at the sanctuary. And first up, it's the obvious one, meerkats. Next on my list, we have foxes, and to be specific, red foxes. And the last one on my list for this video is reptiles.
On his Facebook page, he asked his followers what animal he should rescue next, and that's not really how rescuing works, especially with exotic animals. You don't just decide to rescue a specific animal one day. Thankfully, a lot of the comments on his post replied telling him to help whichever animal needs help, and it's not a pick and mix. So to see that from a bunch of his followers was promising to see. A video went viral of turtles as prizes in an arcade game, and people were freeing the turtles by paying to play the game and then getting the turtles as the prize. Kyle made a response to that, saying that they shouldn't have done that because it would only fuel the suffering of more turtles in the future.
Here's why it's better to just leave the turtles alone, even if they are in an arcade game. So even though, yes, those are real turtles who are individuals in literally an arcade game, and it is so cruel and horrible to watch, when you buy a turtle or any animal or any kind of rescue where you're having to pay, especially in a commercialized situation like this, then you're just fueling the problem. For example, if that girl buys all of the turtles in that arcade game, it doesn't matter because it's just a business. So even though she goes and saves them and she's saving those individuals, that arcade game just gets filled up with way more turtles and you're just funding the business.
But that's sort of what he's doing by purchasing all of these animals for his zoo. He's only funding the pet trade. But on top of that, he's done almost the exact thing that he's calling out in that video. He's bought a crab and some lobsters from a store to set them free in the ocean.
The woman was just about to cook Larry when I said, stop, I want to buy him. So we bought him and she put him in a little plastic bag with absolutely zero oxygen and she thought we were about to cook him up. When we got him in the car, I noticed she had ripped off one of his pincers and I felt so bad. But this did not stop me setting him free. So I took him down to the beach, pulled off the elastic band and I yeeted Larry into the sea. Swim free, my friend. My local supermarket sells live crabs and lobsters and I always feel so bad for them. So I decided to go and buy a crab and let him free. And we walked across the bridge before I lowered him into the water and set him free. I saw him wandering around at the end and he was very happy. So goodbye, Kermit. Your friends will join you soon. Hey guys, so today I was at the Chinese supermarket with my friends and we saw a lobster stuck in a poor little tank doing nothing. So we decided to buy it and let it free. We then got on the train and arrived at the beach. Once we got there, we walked it to the deepest part of the sea and let it off. Sadly, it kind of just sank, but I hope he survived, and yeah, bye.
So yeah, I'm not really sure if he's just being incredibly dishonest by saying that his animals are rescues, or if he's just confused as to what rescuing an animal actually is. But yeah, his sanctuary filled with rescue animals is far from an actual sanctuary. Another sign of that is that he lets all of his animals breed. His tenrecs have had lots of animals.
So guys, the baby tenrecs have actually started eating mealworms on their own. It's so cute. But Flo is a lot faster to get them.
And his meerkats were mating. He announced that Dorothy was pregnant, but he never posted her babies, so I'm assuming that something went wrong there.
But it's absolutely brilliant news that Dorothy is pregnant, and I'm so excited for her to have even more family. Their puppies will be due anytime now.
And he was also keen to get some wallaby babies.
We do have a male and a female, so I'm hoping that we get some baby joeys.
And a legitimate exotic animal sanctuary would never breed their animals. So many exotic animal sanctuaries are already at capacity because people buy these animals not realizing how dangerous they end up being and how much work they actually require, and then send them to a sanctuary if they can.
The government is considering banning primates from being kept as pets. But right now, the situation is getting worse, and this sanctuary can't take in anymore.
We're already at crisis point. We're having to turn animals away.
And they're not the only ones who are overwhelmed. We contacted a number of sanctuaries across the UK, and they all told us they were at capacity.
Not only do these sanctuaries have no interest in breeding these animals, but they also have no room to do that. And Kyle doesn't have any room for his animals to breed either. He originally got 2 albino wallabies, but they began to fight, so he left one in their original enclosure and separated the other elsewhere. But the one that got separated elsewhere was never seen again. I couldn't find out if he gave it to a sanctuary or sold it, but it was never seen again. So he couldn't even accommodate the population that he had, let alone any potential babies. And he said that he was going to keep all the babies he got.
Guys would like me to make a video about doing a pregnancy test on her. Make sure you let me know. And I'm really hoping we have joeys. And just to let you know, guys, I would not be selling any of the babies that are born here. I would just be keeping them for us.
So yeah, breeding is definitely not a good idea for him. He even made a video where he went to Africa to help release some former pet meerkats that had been rewilded, and in the caption it says, "Pet trade breeding needs to be put to an end." And all the while, he was letting his meerkats breed. But things started to go downhill for Kyle's zoo pretty quickly. He encountered a whole bunch of issues he wasn't expecting. Building everything proved to be more difficult than he first thought, and they ordered a small home online, and because of where his property was situated, it could not be taken up his driveway. And on top of that, a journalist snuck onto his property and took some pictures. They found a handful of animals in cages with dirty water bowls. So after encountering all of these issues, he sold the property on Facebook Marketplace for £150,000. Then soon after that, Kyle went into business with a co-owner of a petting farm. They're in the process of building some enclosures for his animals and have already completed some. His marmosets, meerkats, wallabies, some of his reptiles, and his 2 foxes currently live there. And towards the end of 2023, Kyle participated in a Channel 4 documentary called Exotic Pet Trade Exposed. He said if he were to do it all over again, he would do things differently. And he also said he stopped posting his marmosets to social media.
I have 2 common marmosets, right? But I do not post those common marmosets on TikTok at all anymore.
Me and my monkey. Also, he says, this was posted to his 35 million followers just weeks after filming.
So yeah, hopefully Kyle is now making some better choices for his animals. But yeah, that is pretty much everything for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let's take a moment of silence for Elizabeth the capybara. And I will see you in my next video.